living in Nairobi does not deserve devolution. Madam Speaker, in fact, if you recall the reasons that have been advanced by my colleagues, especially the mover of this motion, Senator Kajwang, on why he thinks that Nairobi needs to be managed differently. Madam Speaker, in fact, that matter has already been thought about. There exists on our books a law called the Urban Areas and Cities Act. And Madam Speaker, that act, thank you for that intervention that ensures that at least the senators who have spoken allow us to also contribute on this bill. Yes, I'll first start by saying, Madam Speaker, as both a lawyer and the Senator of Nairobi, I feel attacked this afternoon. So allow me to start by disabusing some of the notions that have been painted. The simplest one, of course, is an accusation that came from the majority leader, that somehow he does not see or does not see why it is necessary for lawyers to be part of some of these bodies that are being proposed in various pieces of legislation. I wanted the majority leader to note that if you look at the proposal in the bill itself, it is a mediation committee we are talking about. So a mediation committee, mediation, I don't know how, where to begin. I think I need to paint a picture for the majority leader what mediation entails. But it is one of those alternative dispute resolution mechanisms that is free from the strictures of litigation, resolution of matters before our courts. And there has developed an area of practice where there are people who are now experts in alternative dispute resolution. And if you see the provision in subsection 7 of the bill, Senator Kajwang has proposed that because this is going to be a dispute resolution mechanism, a mediation committee set up to mediate a matter of a dispute between counties on a matter regarding boundaries, then the person to chair it should be a person with 15 years experience in alternative dispute resolution. I don't think that is a misplaced suggestion. In fact, that committee would benefit immensely by having somebody, not just a lawyer, and not just any lawyer, not even a lawyer who just has 2 or 3 years experience in mediation. No, because of the complex issues that my colleagues have raised here, the bill has provided for somebody with 15 years experience in alternative dispute resolution. And Madam Speaker, on a light note, I have challenged my colleagues here from other professions. If indeed we can find a doctor, a veterinary doctor, or a doctor of Khalwale's caliber, who can be able to do a better job at a mediation meeting than a person with 15 years in alternative dispute resolution, by all means, I don't think the lawyers in this house would object. But what we are saying is nobody should paint the picture that lawyers are somehow imposing themselves in places where they are not needed. In fact, this is one of the areas where a person with that experience would benefit most immensely the job that he has been asked to do. Secondly, Madam Speaker, I have had notions here expressed about whether Nairobi needs to continue as a county. Others have suggested outright that Nairobi needs to be managed differently, that Nairobi should no longer be a county. Madam Speaker, for me, you have to go back to the process of the review of the Constitution. And I was not there, yes. I was still in high school. No, not high school. I was still in the university when some of my colleagues were doing Bomas and Naivasha. But I have had the privilege of reading the final report of the CKRC. And if you read that final report, you will understand the thinking that went into every specific provision of the Constitution and the architecture that we ended up with. The concept or the idea behind devolution, Madam Speaker, does not change based on where the person is or where they live or the circumstances in which they live. The concept of devolution is to get services and resources to the lowest possible unit of administration. Now, lowest units of administration exist just as much in Nairobi as they exist in Homa Bay, where the sponsor of this bill comes from. Madam Speaker, the people of Mukuru Kwanjenga would want direct access to resources and services, just the way somebody in Kanyamwa would insist on direct access to resources and to services. They also want to see government. If you read the CKRC, report, Madam Speaker, you will remember Kenyans saying that government is a far-off notion for them. And if you talk to our brothers and sisters from the northern frontier districts, they will tell you that even people moving from Mandera, from Garissa, coming to Nairobi, used to say that now we are going to Kenya. It is because of devolution that places like Turkana, places like Mandera, Wajir, were seeing the first kilometers of tarmac in their counties, Honorable Madam Speaker, so that nobody can argue that a Kenyan living in Nairobi does not deserve devolution. Madam Speaker, in fact, if you recall the reasons that have been advanced by my colleagues, especially the mover of this motion, Senator Kajwang, on why he thinks that Nairobi needs to be managed differently. Madam Speaker, in fact, that matter has already been thought about. There exists on our books a law called the Urban Areas and Cities Act. And Madam Speaker, that act is Cap 275 of the laws of Kenya. It is still on our books. I want to refer you to the objects of this particular bill, and they are found at Section 3 of the bill, of the Act. They are to provide, the Act is to provide for governance and management of urban centers, urban areas and cities. And if you look at Clause 4A of that Act, which was introduced via an amendment in 2019, it actually provides, Honorable Kajwang, for a mechanism for delineation of boundaries of urban areas and cities. If you go further, Madam Speaker, to Section 6 of that Act, it provides for management that there has to be a way to deal with management and infrastructure in the capital city, and that they shall be managed in the same manner as county governments. Then, Madam Speaker, subsection 3 of that Section 6 talks about the capital city required to provide infrastructure necessary to sustain, number 1, the seat of national government, number 2, offices of the diplomatic missions, and number 3, commerce and industry. So that, Senator Kajwang, all these factors, the uniqueness of Nairobi, is something that has already been anticipated and thought about. And there exists a law to provide a mechanism for collaboration between the national government and the county government of Nairobi for us to be able to manage the unique issues that exist in Nairobi that don't exist in Homa Bay town. I am sure there is no diplomatic posting in Homa Bay. So, Madam Speaker, the problem has been that if you look at subsection 6, subsection 5 of the Urban Areas and Cities Act, there is a requirement for national government and the county government to enter into an agreement regarding the performance of the functions